How can you tell if you have an anxiety disorder? I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Mattu. I focus on treating anxiety throughout my career as a practicing psychologist, and I should be able to quickly, simply answer this question for you. But I can't. Now, to get into this, I have to first define what anxiety actually is. I like to think of it as a collection of stuff happening inside of you that either propels you towards something or pushes you away from it. Like in high school, I would get anxious about tests and imagine all these really bad things happening, and so I'd procrastinate, I would avoid, I would push it away, and that's one of the reasons why I nearly flunked out of high school. But in college, I discovered psychology. I actually started caring about my grades, and instead of avoiding studying when I got anxious, I studied a lot. I practiced, did flashcards, all that stuff. Same person, same type of situation, same emotion, completely different behavior. And this is why anxiety is so weird. To combine both those experiences, anxiety was trying to keep me safe in both situations. In high school, it was trying to keep me safe from all those scary thoughts about having to study and deal with this stuff. In college, it was trying to keep me safe from potentially not doing well in something I really cared about. Safety. That's what anxiety is all about. At least making us feel safe. Anxiety also leads to very clear, specific behaviors. There's the fight response, which helps us to face danger. This is what happened whenever I would yell and scream at my brother because I was actually really scared. He was about to tell my parents about the shady teenage business I was up to. There's the flight response, which helps us to escape danger, and it's what I did anytime a teacher was trying to call on people in high school, and I make myself really small, which is hard to do when you're 6'2", and I would try to totally avoid eye contact, which never worked because it just made me seem a lot more obvious. There's the freeze response, where you kind of don't do anything at all, and it usually helps to keep a situation from escalating and becoming more dangerous. This is the response I always used when I was cruising the New York City subway and something really weird and strange was happening on the car, and I was stuck on that car till the next stop. I would just freeze, not do anything. And there's the tend and befriend response, where you try to help those around you in a dangerous situation. It's something I recently experienced when my neighbors came over after hearing a loud bang, which they thought was something really dangerous, actually ended up being a new bike tire I accidentally kind of sort of overinflated, and it then exploded. You know, we're all okay, but really appreciated those neighbors checking in on me. Fight, flight, freeze, and befriend. Which is your go-to anxiety response? Let me know in the comments below. I'm a big avoider, so I'm all about #team flight. These reactions happen all the time. You're always gonna get anxious in a new situation, like remember all those first days of school and how uncomfortable you felt. They're gonna come up when you're in an unexpected situation, like the other day I was driving and the power went out to the traffic lights, and it was kind of a scary situation. I was much more on edge. It's gonna happen around important events, like leading up to a job interview, during the job interview, maybe even after the job interview. And also whenever there is imminent danger, like if you're camping and you look outside and you notice there's a bear really close by, you're gonna get anxious. So if anxiety keeps us safe and these anxious reactions happen all the time, where do we draw that line between what is considered regular anxiety and what might be considered an anxiety disorder? This is really important to unpack because anxiety disorders are the most common mental health disorder among adults in the United States. They're also a huge problem globally. If we look at data here in America, 20% of people right now have experienced an anxiety disorder in this past year, and 30% will experience an anxiety disorder sometime in their lifetime. That means you definitely know someone who struggles with anxiety. there's a good chance it might be you because you clicked on this video. Don't worry, me too. You're in good company. But how is that level defined, and what does that mean for you? There are two major classifications of mental illness. There's the DSM, which is widely used in the United States, and there's the ICD, which is widely used globally. Think of them as sort of the dictionaries of mental illness. You can look up a disorder and it has all the criteria for what you need to have in order to be diagnosed with this problem. Now, how are these criteria created? Well, every few years there's a group of clinicians and scientists and sometimes mental health advocates that sort of come together and figure out what the criteria should be, if existing criteria should be changed, if new disorders should be introduced, if old disorders should be taken out. That whole process is about trying to separate what's very common and healthy and uncommon and probably unhealthy. That uncommon stuff, the stuff that doesn't usually occur and is causing someone problems, that's what becomes a disorder. Now, this is not a perfect system by any means. You can imagine when groups of people are trying to come together and they're trying to define what's common and uncommon, bias slips into this process. It's why just a few decades ago, homosexuality was still in the DSM. There's been a lot of criticism that the DSM is a very Western, English, American, biased view of mental health, and it doesn't take a lot of more global perspectives into account. So the process is flawed. But if we look at all the criteria for anxiety disorders, there's one very specific thing that leaps out. The fear, anxiety, or avoidance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. This is what separates regular anxiety from disordered anxiety. It limits your life. It's causing you a lot of problems. It's creating a lot of distress. It's a little subjective, yes, because what is distressing to one person is different from what's distressing to another person, and anxiety is weird. Remember the example I had about anxiety around tests in high school and college and how that factored out differently? Yes. This is why it's so important to work with a professional if you are getting into this range of stuff, because they can help you to determine what's more common, what's less common, what is expected of you, because some of the fine details here, it's hard to know unless you're someone who's outside of your head. Impairment can mean a lot of different things. Like maybe anxiety is more distressing for you. It's like someone turned up the volume on anxiety symptoms for you. So instead of a accelerated heart rate when you're anxious, it feels like your chest is about to just completely explode. Instead of increased breathing, it feels like you can't catch your breath. Instead of a little bit more sweating, it feels like all the sweat is just about to leak right out of your clothes. And those anxiety symptoms might stick around for much longer. They might start much earlier than they do for most people, maybe days and weeks in advance, and they might stick around long after the thing you're anxious about has finished. All of this stuff then can make it very difficult for you to be present. It makes it hard for you to take those tests because maybe your mind goes blank. Or if you were like me and you had social anxiety, going to social situations is so difficult because you're so stuck in your head that it's actually really hard to pay attention and be with other people. And those symptoms are so overwhelming. If you're an athlete, you start to get too anxious, your performance declines. You actually aren't able to do the things as well as you could. If you experience a lot of this, you probably end up avoiding a lot of stuff in your life. And this is another big problem with anxiety. People might stop doing the things they want to do at school. They drop out of extracurriculars. Their grade starts to suffer. Their careers sort of flatline. They are really unhappy about their relationships because they can't really be there for people. And maybe they haven't really formed romantic relationships because dating is so overwhelming and so difficult. This is the point in the video where you might be wondering, do I have an anxiety disorder? Well, think about these two questions and answer it as honestly as you can to yourself. 0 to 5, how much is anxiety getting in the way of the things you have to do? And how much is anxiety getting in the way of your friendships and your relationships? If you answered on the higher end of either of those questions, there's a good chance you might be part of that 20% of the population that has recently experienced an anxiety disorder. If you are struggling with anxiety, I want you to know that while this is your problem, it's also not your fault. There's probably a lot of reasons why you're experiencing this level of anxiety. For a lot of people, it starts with genetics. Anxiety can run in families. That was certainly the case with my mom's side of the family. And that gets back to that idea of being born with the volume turned up on anxiety. Maybe you grew up in a stressful environment or experienced trauma, and this can wire you to be more on guard and see more danger around you. Sometimes you're just going through your life, something really anxiety-provoking happens, and boom, your mind has associated these things together. That's how I developed my fear of sharks after my parents let me watch Jaws at a very young age. And sometimes people just haven't learned how to deal with anxiety-provoking situations. Like once I had social anxiety, I started avoiding a lot of social situations, and then I never really learned how to make new friends, how to deal with conflict, how to be assertive, because I just avoided those situations. What drives your anxiety? Is it biology, experience, environment, not knowing how to deal with it? Let me know in the comments below. Here's the good news. If anxiety is limiting your life, there are a lot of things you can do to start feeling more courageous in the face of fear. And it starts with watching videos like this one and my many other videos on anxiety on this channel, because what they do is they make these emotions less mysterious. When you name the emotion, you give it less intensity, you make it a little bit more manageable. There are also a lot of psychotherapies that have been scientifically shown to reduce anxiety. And what most of them have in common is they help you to learn about your anxiety, they help you learn new skills to experience anxiety in a healthy way, and they give you opportunity to practice those skills in real anxiety-provoking situations. There are also a lot of medications available to help you deal with anxiety. And remember that volume analogy I keep bringing up? The way I think about it is a lot of these medications turn down the volume on anxiety. And most people who are experiencing a mild to moderate anxiety disorder get a lot of benefit just from medication alone or just from psychotherapy alone. But people who are in a more severe range of anxiety probably need a combination of both medication and psychotherapy. I kind of think about it as the medication is the friend that helps you to actually take advantage and apply the psychotherapy. If you want to take a free scientifically supported assessment that'll give you an anxiety score, check out the link in the description below. And if you want to start learning skills you can use to quickly get some anxiety relief, check out this video right over here. And if you want to watch all my videos on anxiety, check out this playlist right over here.